Unfortunately, Hamas has used hospitals as basis for their terror operations. Why were there terrorists who were operating from a hospital? And that should make the people watching this think.
We've got a really great InGrace special for you from Jerusalem. You've been hearing that Israel hit a hospital and killed journalists. We're going to find out the real story, and we're going to be talking to a reporter. He used to, for 24 years, be the correspondent, for the political correspondent for the Jerusalem Post. And he covered the Knesset, and he really knows all of the different nuances in Israeli politics and Israeli policies. But now he is running an organization called HonestReporting, and it is alerting people around the world to the bias in the media against Israel, especially during this conflict with Gaza. And hey, while I'm interviewing Gil, make sure that you leave comments to what I say, what he says. If you agree or disagree, put it in the comments while I'm interviewing him. Let's go to Gil now. Gil Hoffman, great to see you again. We are so thankful that you are out there helping all of us understand what's really going on in Israel. And I needed to ask you because Israel just killed some journalists, and this has happened before, and also in that hit a hospital. So what can you tell us about that situation?
Well, the IDF tonight released pictures and the titles within Hamas of 6 terrorists who were killed in that strike. And at the same time said that too much firepower was used. It's a mistake and it's being investigated. Israel's under a microscope. The Jewish people have always been under a microscope since the first Jew back with Abraham so long ago. And we know here in Israel that everything we do will be scrutinized. And so, yes, 6 of them were terrorists. 1 infiltrated Israel on October 7th. And yet, why are we even talking about a hospital? Why were there terrorists who were operating from a hospital? And that should make the people watching this think.
Yeah, so the facts are there were terrorists killed. The facts are that a hospital was hit and they were then and therefore killed. What were they doing in a hospital? So what were they doing in the hospital?
Unfortunately, Hamas has used hospitals as basis for their terror operations. One of the family members of a hostage still being held in Gaza said in an event today that hospital has been used to house hostages throughout this war. And there were tunnels underneath that hospital, just like there were underneath every hospital in Gaza. You can see a map of tunnels that's interactive. You can actually move it around at tunnels.honestreporting.com. Because people need to understand that this is the way Hamas operates, and that's why the war isn't over yet.
How does the world not know that? How does the world, or do they just, no one's putting all of that out there? It's just this, here's the headline, here's the knee jerk, Israel's bad, and no one's taking the time to dig in a little deeper?
Pastor, I understand. Civilians being killed is a terrible tragedy. Journalists being killed is a terrible tragedy. I'm still a journalist myself. Then you have to look a little deeper and think, okay, who were they? And if journalists were working for a media outlet that's the propaganda arm of a terror operation or a terror organization, is that better? I'm not going to give the answers here. I'm here to raise questions to your very educated audience.
Journalists cover wars. Israel has not allowed independent journalists into Gaza. They have allowed a few embedded journalists in with the IDF. So what's the reason Israel doesn't allow independent journalists in there? And should Israel have a different policy on that?
Israel has not allowed journalists to travel independently in Gaza since 2014, when it's been a war zone. When it's a war zone, we don't want people getting killed. That's the reason. Even though Netanyahu said in a press conference just 2 weeks ago, we've got nothing to hide, we want them to see what's going on, He has not yet since then given any directive to change those rules to the IDF. I see both sides. On the one hand, I see why it makes sense to not have journalists just on their own going through some places as dangerous as that. On the other hand, because Israel has made this decision, you have no Walter Cronkite or Daniel Pearl or Edward R. Murrow giving the world the news out of Gaza. You have ordinary Gazans with cell phones who know that their lives depend on presenting the narrative of Hamas. If they don't, they won't be reporting much more and they won't be living much more.
You covered the Knesset for how many years as a reporter?
24.
Okay. So in those 24 years, were you ever critical of the government in your reporting?
Every day.
If you were a journalist in the Palestinian Authority in Gaza, could you criticize those that were in charge? If you were
Neither
a
one.
Palestinian?
Neither the Palestinian Authority that governs Area A and Area B of the West Bank, and nor Hamas if I was a journalist in Gaza.
And if you did criticize Hamas or Fatah or the PA, let's say you're a Palestinian journalist, what would happen to you?
What's happened to others? They've been killed. Hamas kills its political opponents all the time. And we at Honest Reporting have reported on such cases. It's very sad, and the world needs to understand this. They need to understand that they cannot trust news coming out of Gaza. They need to be educated news consumers. It's not the same as news coming out of Chicago.
Well, I tell you, to me, that's the answer. If you cannot in Gaza independently be independent or fearing your life of how you report, then it's not. It's going to be skewed. It's going to be skewed against Israel. And you already have noticed, and you've already alerted us to the fact that there is a skew against Jews and against Israel anyway in the mass media of the world. And I think many nations are talking about a Palestinian state and all of this stuff. So, what is your opinion? Alert us to, like, is the world media doing any better, or is the world media doing the same or worse as you've been watching that? And then what would you also say to those that suggest a Palestinian state right now?
Throughout this conflict, the world media has been getting it wrong. Let's not forget 10 days into the conflict, they accused Israel of purposely bombing a hospital and killing 500 people. And they claimed to know it was 500 people within seconds because that's what Hamas told them, even though there was a building that came down around the same time in Florida and Surfside. It took a month for people to know then how many people were there, but here they knew it was 500 and that 350 of them were women and another 350 of them were children. Hamas math is different than other math. Then they've accused Israel of purposely starving children, but they can't come up with a picture of even one that didn't have some kind of disease that predated October 7th or that had nothing to do with Israel. Now they're accusing Israel of deliberately targeting journalists. Well, if Israel is deliberately targeting journalists, there'd be a lot more dead. Israel has done everything possible to minimize civilian deaths on both sides of the border. Israel's currently evacuating Gaza City in case it will invade there to attack Hamas. Israel's had soldiers who risked their lives, lost their lives in the process of trying to prevent civilian harm in Gaza against the Palestinians who are trying to purposely kill Israeli civilians who are using their own people as human shields. The media has gotten it wrong the entire time. And so even the people that are most empathetic to the Palestinians, would you want them to have a state under that kind of leadership? Don't they need to meet some criteria of governance before? Well, there are rules of what a state needs. A stable government, a border that's set, recognized by the world. There are a lot of criteria that were set in an international conference in Montevideo nearly a century ago. The Palestinians don't meet any of those criteria. And if it would come to a vote, the United States would veto it, and it requires a unanimous vote in the UN Security Council. So it's not happening.
And that's disappointing to me that it would require the United States to veto it. And I'm glad that there is a powerful country that is your friend. I was in Israel when Israel attacked Iran. My wife and I were there with a film crew. My wife and I were actually heading to Ben Gurion at 2 in the morning on the 13th of June. And we heard these sirens and we got these alerts on our phone and we didn't know what to do. So we finished our drive to the airport and they said the airport is closed and no flights are coming in and out, go home. And so we went back
Wow.
to our apartment rental and we got to experience what you guys experience all the time. We experienced it for 3 days until we can get out through Egypt. But what is the
Wow.
psyche of those of you living in Israel under the constant threat? Maybe not Iranian missiles, although I'm sure that's not over. That story's not over. But the missiles coming from Yemen, and there was a multi-head warhead missile that just came through recently. What is it like to live in Israel under that constant threat?
Oh, it's very scary, Pastor. I have a little girl, and when I told her I was visiting America, I told her I was going to a place with a lot of Jews called New Jersey. She said, "Oh, do they have a lot of missiles and rockets and sirens over there?" That's her perspective. That's what she lives with, and now you had to experience that too. Uh, it's been going on for way too long, and Israel's been effective in this war in stopping the missile fire from Lebanon and from Syria. We hope that it will end it from Gaza and from Yemen too, and of course dealt a heavy blow to Iran with the help of the United States. And one important note is that the last plane out of Israel before Israel did attack Iran had hundreds of evangelical Christian students from the wonderful program Passages.
Wonderful. Well, our hearts are with you. And every time I see something in the news that's slanted, I think of Gil Hoffman because you are, first of all, you're an amazing journalist. You have a track record of great journalistic skills, but you're a Chicagoan, which I love that because we're here in Chicago. You like the Cubs, so we have a lot in common. You've actually come to our church and help educate our people on these same issues. But we need to be informed, and I think especially as Christians, if we're hearing a lot of negativity, we're starting to see some conservatives that are going anti-Israel, and some are anti-Semitic. Like telling the truth, telling the story, and our world is really unraveling in the area of what is true. Can we even know truth? And you have AI coming in, and even and the stuff with Israel that's against it just slants against Israel without hearing. Like we need more Gil Hoffmans to be able to report on what is true. And you said something about the hospital, like the terrorists using the hospital as cover, right? And then forcing Israel to hit it because Israel's going to get criticized for that, right? But like, how does the IDF make those decisions? Like, should we worry about world opinion? Should we take out these really bad guys? Should we not because it's a hospital and they're going to lie about us in the news?
War is ugly, and it's constantly got contradicting goals. You do want to defeat the enemy. That's the primary goal in a war, obviously. But you also have to help your people feel safe, which those two don't necessarily always go together. You have to deter your enemies and make them fear you. And at the same time, you have to look acceptable to the world with the media and the social media filtering it through. You're not going to be able to please all the people all the time, most of the time. And that's why wars tend to be quicker nowadays than they used to be. This is a long war. It had to be a long war because 80% of the homes in Gaza had some kind of terror infrastructure. 100% of the schools, hospitals, playgrounds, mosques, and cemeteries. And so taking that away, getting rid of that terror infrastructure, has taken time. I wish this could be a 6-day war. 6-day wars are good for Israel. But unfortunately, we needed a 690-day war. And it's impossible to not look terrible during such a lengthy war. But Israel's doing what it needs to do because it'll bring lengthy peace, please God, to the people of Israel and the Gazan people as well when Hamas is defeated. And now Iran defeated, Hezbollah and Lebanon defeated, the Syrian Iranian backed regime defeated. This will bring long-term peace and security that'll enable you to bring a lot more people over here. And people should be able to visit next summer.
Yeah, and actually, peace in the Middle East is a rarity, and Israel is doing a lot for us as Americans and as Westerners to help us stay safer. And people don't really realize that. The world is saying that Israel is purposely starving the Gazan civilians. So, what is the truth about the food situation in Gaza?
The food situation in Gaza is that Israel has given more aid and food to enemy combatants and and civilian populations of people that we're at war with than any country at war in the history of mankind on this earth. And yet Israel's being attacked, falsely accused of starving, actually flooding with aid right now. There's a wonderful evangelical Christian named Reverend Johnny Moore who is taking great risk in operating humanitarian centers that are giving out food throughout Gaza in order to make the people of Gaza realize that they don't need to depend on Hamas for their livelihood anymore. In the past, the corrupt United Nations cooperated with the Hamas in giving the Hamas the food that they would steal and sell at marked prices to the people. Instead, it's being given out for free by good Christians that are coming to Gaza and making the world a safer place, not just helping the ordinary Gazan people have food. And it's something larger because this war is going to end soon, Pastor, please God. President Trump said 2-3 weeks today. And then the narrative war will continue. And it's one or the other. Is Israel an international pariah like apartheid South Africa? We'd never be able to recover from that. And if that's what the world thinks, terror is going to be emboldened around the world. Jews won't be able to travel anywhere. They won't be safe anywhere. And Israel has some tough times ahead. And if the world knows the truth, which is that in this war, Israel made the entire world safer by defeating genocidal terrorists and stopping the creation of an Islamic fundamentalist nuclear bomb, then we're going to have a post-war economic boom over here in a country whose economy is based on tourism and high tech that have both been hurt by the double whammy of a war and a pandemic. Terror is going to go down around the world. The entire world is going to be safer. It's that big a difference, and it really depends on the people who watch this show. You need to be the ones spreading that truth. You have your social media. You have your friends that you go to church with, and you need to be telling them what's really going on here.
And we had the privilege of you coming to speak to our last group that went to Israel in February. We're planning another trip in February. So, Lord willing, we might see you again there, and to be able to meet Gil Hoffman in person is amazing. So thank you so much for giving us the time. I know you stayed up late for us, but we needed to kind of get the accurate perspective on the breaking news that's coming out of Israel. And I hope every Christian will think about this. We have a biblical mandate to support Israel, and we have a practical mandate, I believe, to support Israel, because supporting Israel helps us stay safer. God bless you, Gil. Give my best to your family, your little girl, and we'll keep praying for your safety.
Much appreciated.
What an amazing man, and I hope you learned a lot from Gil Hoffman. I hope that you would also consider coming to Israel with InGrace. We have a tour coming up in February where we're showing our solidarity and seeing the amazing country of Israel. We would love for you to check out our other InGrace Israel videos. We just did a react video to Megyn Kelly's interview with Marjorie Taylor Greene. We also did a react video to Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, as I believe a lot has been said lately against Israel and Jewish people. That wasn't accurate, so we want you to watch those. Plus, we have another YouTube channel called InGrace Adventures, where we're taking you all over the world, showing you God's beautiful creation and how we know for sure that He exists and the Bible is true. We also want to make sure you know the message of hope, the message of the gospel. The thing that has completely changed my life is the fact that Jesus came into the world as a Jew. He lived a perfect life. He's God in the flesh. He died on the cross for our sins, and He rose again. And the Bible says if you put your trust in Him, you will be saved. That's what gives me hope every day, that I'm on my way to heaven and I'm right with God, but also it gives me good perspective too on how to live and how to treat other people and how to interpret the news. And so maybe that's something that will help you, knowing that there is hope because of Jesus. We also want to make sure that you know about the InGrace website, ingrace.tv. There you can find a ton of resources. We have books, we have DVDs, we have gospel literature, and go to ingrace.tv for more information there. And you also could pay it forward and help us make more content that's telling the right story about Israel. When you go to ingrace.tv, you can make a gift there, and it is tax deductible. Thank you so much for your involvement, for watching. Don't forget though to hit the thumbs up if you like this video. That would mean a lot to me. It would encourage us, and it will tell YouTube that you are engaged. Also, make sure you're subscribed to both of our InGrace channels, InGrace Israel and InGrace Adventures. May God richly bless you and your family.